Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his face as he climbed through the broken fence. The old industrial zone was off limits, but nobody really cared what happened here anymore. Most of the machines had been moved to the new sector years ago, leaving behind empty buildings and piles of scrap metal. At 16, Jake had learned to take care of himself. The orphanage had kicked him out when he turned 15, and since then he made his living by finding useful parts in the abandoned areas. He would clean them up and sell them to Pete Johnson, who ran a small repair shop in town. The morning air was cool as Jake walked between the old warehouses. He carried a worn backpack and a small toolkit that Pete had given him. Today felt different somehow. Maybe it was the strange humming sound he had heard earlier, or the way the birds had all flown away at once. Jake stopped walking when he saw the crater. It was about 50 feet wide and still smoking. In the center sat something that definitely did not belong on New Haven. The object was silver and shaped like a teardrop, with strange symbols carved into its surface. One side was completely smashed open. His first thought was to run. Everyone knew the rules about aliens. If you found anything strange, you were supposed to call the authorities right away. Contact with aliens was strictly forbidden, but something made Jake move closer instead. He could hear a sound coming from inside the crashed ship. It was weak and rhythmic, like breathing. Jake climbed carefully over the twisted metal and peered into the dark opening. An alien lay inside, clearly dying. The creature was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Its breathing was shallow and blood seeped from several wounds. When it saw Jake, it did not seem afraid. "Water," the alien whispered in accented English. "Please." Jake stared for a moment. He should run. He should call Mayor Collins or Captain Hayes. This was exactly the kind of situation that could get him in serious trouble. But looking at the dying creature, Jake could only think of one thing. This being was suffering, and Jake had water in his backpack. He pulled out his water bottle and carefully helped the alien drink. The creature's eyes closed with relief. "Thank you, young human," it said softly. "I am Elder Kethvar of the Zephyrian people." "I'm Jake," he replied, not knowing what else to say. Over the next few hours, Jake learned that Kethvar's ship had suffered engine failure while passing through human space. The Elder was old, even by his people's standards, and the crash had injured him too badly to survive. But he was grateful not to die alone. Jake knew he should leave, but something kept him there. Maybe it was the way Kethvar spoke about his homeworld, describing cities that floated in the clouds and forests that sang in the wind. Or maybe it was the loneliness Jake recognized in the alien's eyes, the same loneliness he felt every day. As the sun moved across the sky, Jake made several trips back to town. He brought food, medical supplies, and a blanket. Each time he expected to find Kethvar dead, but the alien held on. He seemed to grow stronger when Jake was there, as if the company mattered more than medicine. "Why do you help me?" Kethvar asked on the second day. "Your people forbid contact with mine." Jake thought about it. "You're hurt," he said finally. "That's all that matters." Kethvar smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features but somehow felt familiar. "My people have a saying. The heart that gives water to a stranger will never know thirst. I begin to understand why my daughter speaks of humans with curiosity rather than fear." "Your daughter?" "Elder Sithana. She leads our tribe now. I was returning from a long journey when my ship failed." Kethvar's breathing grew more labored. "Jake, I must tell you something important. When I die, you must perform the ritual of farewell for my people. Will you do this?" Jake nodded, though he did not understand why it mattered. Kethvar spent his remaining strength teaching Jake the proper way to prepare a Zephyrian for their final journey. "The body must be covered with stones from the earth," he explained, "and certain words must be spoken to guide the spirit home." On the third morning, Jake found Kethvar barely conscious. The alien's breathing was so weak that Jake had to lean close to hear his words. "You have shown me that there is hope," Kethvar whispered. "Hope for both our peoples. Remember this, Jake Miller. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the course of worlds." Those were Elder Kethvar's last words. Jake sat with the body for a long time, feeling sad in a way he had not expected. He had known the alien for only 3 days, but somehow Kethvar had become the closest thing to family Jake had ever known. When the sun began to set, Jake carefully followed the ritual Kethvar had taught him. He gathered stones and arranged them over the alien's body, speaking the words in the Zephyrian language as best he could remember them. The sounds felt strange on his tongue, but he tried to put meaning behind each syllable. "May your spirit find the path home," Jake said in English, adding his own words to the ceremony. "Thank you for trusting me." As he finished the ritual, Jake felt like he was being watched. He looked around the crater but saw nothing unusual. The feeling persisted as he walked home through the empty industrial zone. Jake did not know that 3 Zephyrian ships hung in space just beyond New Haven's sensor range. He did not know that Elder Sithana had been searching for her father for weeks, or that she had finally tracked his ship's distress signal to this world. He did not know that the Zephyrian search party had been monitoring his every action through advanced sensors, recording his kindness to their dying elder. Most importantly, Jake did not know that his simple decision to give water to a stranger had just changed the future of humanity. As Jake reached his small apartment above Pete's repair shop, he thought about Kethfar's final words. The idea that his small act of kindness could change anything seemed impossible. He was just an orphan who fixed broken machines for a living. But deep in space, Elder Sithana watched the recordings of her father's final days and made a decision that would soon turn Jake's quiet life upside down. The boy who had honored a dying alien was about to discover that sometimes the universe notices when someone chooses compassion over fear. 3 days after burying Elder Kethfar, Jake tried to return to his normal routine. He searched for scrap metal in the morning, cleaned and sorted it in the afternoon, and sold what he could to Pete Johnson. But nothing felt normal anymore. Jake kept thinking about the alien's words and the strange ritual he had performed. Sometimes he caught himself looking up at the sky, wondering if other Zephyrians were out there among the stars. The thought both excited and frightened him. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Jake was eating breakfast in his small room when he heard sirens. Through his window, he could see colonial security vehicles racing toward the industrial zone. His heart sank as he realized where they were going. Captain Hayes had found the crash site. Jake quickly gathered his few belongings and stuffed them into his backpack. If they discovered his footprints around the crater or found any trace of his visits, he would be in serious trouble. Contact with aliens was not just forbidden, it was considered treason. But before Jake could leave his room, someone knocked on his door. He opened it to find Danny Rodriguez, his only real friend in the colony. "Jake, you need to see this," Danny said, his eyes wide with excitement. "There are alien ships in the sky." Jake followed Danny outside and looked up. 3 large ships hung motionless above New Haven, their hulls gleaming silver in the morning sun. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, unlike anything humans had ever built. People gathered in the streets, pointing and talking in nervous voices. Some children cried while their parents held them close. Nobody knew what the aliens wanted, but everyone remembered the stories of first contact wars from other colonies. Mayor Collins' voice crackled over the emergency broadcast system. "All citizens remain calm. We are in contact with the alien vessels. There is no immediate threat." "Repeat, there is no immediate threat." Jake felt sick. The aliens had to be Zephyrians. They must have come looking for Elder Kethvar. What would happen when they found his grave? At the colony administration building, Mayor Collins was having the worst day of his career. He sat in the emergency command center with Captain Hayes and Dr. Lisa Park, the colony's only xenobiologist. None of them had any idea how to handle first contact with an advanced alien species. "They're not responding to our standard communication protocols," Captain Hayes reported. "But their ships are maintaining a safe distance. No hostile action so far." Dr. Park studied the readings on her computer screen. "Their technology is far more advanced than ours. If they wanted to attack, we wouldn't be able to stop them." "Then what do they want?" Mayor Collins asked. The answer came a few minutes later when the main communication screen flickered to life. A tall alien with blue-gray skin appeared, wearing what looked like ceremonial armor. Her large eyes held intelligence and authority. "I am War Leader Nixara of the Zephyrian Confederation," the alien said in perfect English. "We have come seeking our missing elder and the human who honored his passing." The 3 humans stared at the screen in shock. How did the aliens know about the crash? And what did they mean about someone honoring their elder's passing? We found a crash site," Mayor Collins said carefully. "But there were no survivors." "That is correct," Nixara replied. "Elder Kethfar died 3 days ago. But he did not die alone. A young human stayed with him. provided comfort in his final hours, and performed the sacred ritual of farewell. "We wish to speak with this human." Captain Hayes and Dr. Park exchanged glances. Someone had made contact with the alien and never reported it. This was exactly the kind of violation that could get the entire colony in trouble with Earth Command. "We need to investigate," Captain Hayes said. "If someone had contact with your elder, we'll find them." "You misunderstand," Nixara said, and her voice carried a hint of warning. "We are not asking you to find this human. We already know who he is. We wish to speak with Jake Miller." The silence in the command center was deafening. None of them had expected the aliens to know the name of a specific colonist, especially not an orphaned teenager with no official standing. "How do you know that name?" Dr. Park asked. "We have been watching," Nixara replied simply. "Jake Miller showed great kindness to our elder. He gave water to a dying stranger, stayed with him so he would not face death alone, and honored our customs even though he owed us nothing. Such actions are rare in this galaxy." Mayor Collins felt sweat on his forehead. This was spiraling out of control quickly. "What do you want with Jake?" "We wish to understand if his compassion represents the nature of his species, or if he is unusual among humans. This question has great importance for the future relationship between our peoples." Before anyone could respond, the door to the command center burst open. Jake Miller stood there, breathing hard as if he had been running. Danny Rodriguez was right behind him. "I heard my name on the emergency broadcast," Jake said. "I know you're looking for me." Captain Hayes immediately moved toward Jake. "Jake Miller, you're under arrest for violating first contact protocols and endangering the colony." "Wait," Dr. Park said quickly. "Let's hear what he has to say first." Jake looked at the alien on the screen. She was different from Elder Cathvar, younger and more intimidating, but he could see the same intelligence in her eyes. "Are you his daughter?" Jake asked. "Elder Cathvar told me about Elder Sithana." Nixara's expression softened slightly. "I am war leader of her forces. Elder Sithana leads our people now, and she wishes to honor the human who gave her father dignity in death." "I didn't do anything special," Jake said. "He was hurt and needed help. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," Nixara replied. "Most would not. Most humans fear what they do not understand. You chose compassion over fear, kindness over safety. This is why we must speak with you further." Captain Hayes stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. This boy violated direct orders about alien contact. He needs to face consequences for his actions." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. When Nixara spoke again, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Jake Miller is under the protection of the Zephyrian Confederation. Any attempt to punish him for showing mercy to our elder will be considered an act of hostility against our people, Mayor." Collins quickly moved between Jake and Captain Hayes. The last thing they needed was to start an interstellar incident over colony law enforcement. "Perhaps we can discuss this calmly," Mayor Collins suggested. "What exactly do you want from Jake?" "We want him to come with us," Nixara said. "There are others among our people who must meet him, who must see for themselves that his kindness was genuine. The future of human-Zephyrian relations may depend on it." Jake felt the weight of everyone's eyes on him. He thought about Elder Cathvar's final words about small acts of kindness changing the course of worlds. At the time, it had seemed like the rambling of a dying alien. Now Jake wondered if the Elder had known exactly what he was talking about. "What happens if I say no?" Jake asked. Nixara was quiet for a long moment. "Then we will know that humans cannot be trusted to honor their commitments even to the dead. We will mark your space as forbidden territory and ensure that our paths never cross again." The implications hit everyone in the room at once. Humanity's expansion into this sector of space would be blocked by an obviously superior alien force. Thousands of colonies could be cut off from Earth. Jake looked around the room at the faces of the people who controlled his world. None of them had ever shown him much kindness. Mayor Collins saw him as a problem to be managed. Captain Hayes viewed him as a potential criminal. Even Dr. Park, who seemed nice enough, had never spoken to him before today. But Elder Cathvar had treated him like family in those final days. The alien had shared stories and wisdom, had trusted Jake with sacred knowledge about his people. If the Zephyrians wanted to honor that connection, Jake thought he owed it to Cathvar's memory to listen. "I'll come with you," Jake said quietly. "But I want to come back home when we're done talking." Nixara nodded. You have our word that you will be returned safely. Elder Sithana is eager to meet the human her father spoke of with such respect. As Jake prepared to leave with the aliens, he had no idea that his decision would soon test everything he believed about himself and his species. The Zephyrians had been watching humanity for years, debating whether humans were ready to join the larger galactic community. Jake's kindness to a dying elder had given them hope. But now came the real test. The Zephyrian ship was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. The walls seemed to glow with soft light and the floors felt warm beneath his feet. Everything was smooth and curved as if the entire vessel had been grown rather than built. War leader Nixera led Jake through corridors filled with aliens going about their daily tasks. They all stopped to stare at him, their large eyes studying the human with curiosity. Some seemed friendly, while others looked suspicious or worried. Your presence here causes much discussion, Nixera explained as they walked. Many of my people have never seen a human up close. Some fear your species, while others are curious about your potential. Why do they fear us? Jake asked. Humans expand rapidly across space. You build colonies on every world you find. Many species see this as aggressive behavior. Jake thought about that. He had never considered that human expansion might look threatening to aliens. On New Haven, people talked about colonization as progress and exploration, not conquest. They reached a large chamber where dozens of Zephyrians waited. At the center sat an alien who was clearly important. She wore robes decorated with intricate patterns, and her bearing suggested great authority. When she saw Jake, her eyes widened with emotion. You are Jake Miller, she said, rising from her seat. I am Elder Sithana, daughter of Kethvar. You gave my father comfort in his final hours. I'm sorry for your loss, Jake said, not knowing what else to say. He was a good person. I mean, a good being. Elder Sithana smiled sadly. He spoke of you in his final transmission to our ship. He said he had found hope in the kindness of a human child. She gestured for Jake to sit beside her. But kindness alone is not enough to prove the worth of a species. My father was old and perhaps too trusting. Others among our people believe his judgment was clouded by approaching death. A younger Zephyrian stepped forward, his posture aggressive. I am War Commander Vexthal. I believe humans are dangerous. Your species has a history of violence and conquest. One boy's kindness does not change this. That is why we must test him, Elder Sithana said calmly. If Jake's compassion is genuine and representative of human potential, it will be proven. If it was merely calculated kindness designed to gain advantage, that too will be revealed. Jake felt his stomach tighten. What kind of test? You will live among us for one full cycle, 30 of your days. Elder Sithana explained. You will face challenges that reveal your true character. Some will test your courage, others your wisdom. All will show us whether your kindness to my father came from a good heart or a scheming mind. And if I fail? War Commander Vexthal answered before Elder Sithana could speak. Then we will know that humans cannot be trusted. We will forbid your species from entering Zephyrian space. Your expansion in this direction will end. The weight of that statement hit Jake hard. Thousands of human colonies depended on trade routes through this sector. If the Zephyrians closed their territory, it could isolate entire worlds from Earth. I understand, Jake said quietly. When do we start? The first test came immediately. Elder Sithana led Jake to a room where a young Zephyrian lay on a medical bed, clearly sick. The child was barely conscious and breathing with difficulty. This is my grandson, Keseth, Elder Sithana said. He has been ill for many days. Our healers have done all they can, but he grows weaker. Some among our people say that your presence on this ship has brought bad fortune to our family. Jake looked at the sick child and felt the same compassion he had felt for Elder Kethvar. How can I help? You cannot, War Commander Vexthal said from behind them. This is not a test of your healing abilities. It is a test of your character. Will you leave now that you see the consequences of your actions? Will you demand to return home to avoid responsibility for this illness? Jake understood the real test. They wanted to see if he would abandon them when things became difficult, if his kindness only extended to easy situations. I'll stay, Jake said firmly. If there's any chance I can help, I want to try. And if my being here really is causing problems, then I should be here to face them. Over the following days, Jake learned about Zephyrian culture while caring for young Keseth. He brought the child water, read to him from human stories, and simply sat with him when the fever was bad. The boy seemed to improve slightly when Jake was there, though the healers said it might be coincidence. The second test came when Jake discovered that the ship's food supplies were running low. A malfunction in their production systems meant that everyone would have to eat smaller meals until repairs were completed. War Commander Vexthul appeared at Jake's door with 2 meal portions. "The rationing has begun," he said. "However, as our guest, you are entitled to maintain full meals while the crew reduces their intake." Jake looked at the extra food, then at the smaller portions being distributed to the Zephyrian crew members. Many of them were already thin from their long journey searching for Elder Kethvar. "I'll take the same rations as everyone else," Jake said, handing back the extra portion. "You are certain? The reduced diet will be quite uncomfortable for a human." "I'm certain." Vexthul took the food without comment, but Jake noticed something that might have been approval in the alien's eyes. The third test was more complex. Elder Sithana presented Jake with a moral dilemma. The Zephyrians had intercepted communications from Earth Command. A human military fleet was being assembled to rescue Jake, even though the aliens had promised to return him safely. "Your military leaders do not trust our word," Elder Sithana said. "They are sending warships to demand your return. If those ships enter our space with weapons powered, my people will consider it an act of war." Jake felt sick. He had never asked for rescue. He had come willingly to honor Elder Kethavar's memory and to help his people understand humans better. "Can you contact them?" Jake asked. "Can you tell them I'm safe?" "We have tried. They do not believe our communications. They think we are forcing you to lie." War Commander Vexthul stepped forward. "There is a solution. You could record a message for your people, telling them you chose to come here and asking them to turn back. But doing so would mean taking sides against your own species' military." This was the real test, Jake realized. Would he choose loyalty to his own species over doing what was right? Would he risk being seen as a traitor to prevent a war? "I'll make the recording," Jake said. "I came here by choice, and I don't want people to die because of misunderstandings." As Jake recorded his message to Earth Command, asking them to trust the Zephyrians and turn back their fleet, he noticed that many of the crew members had gathered to watch. Their expressions had changed over the past weeks. Where once he had seen suspicion and fear, now he saw something that looked like respect. Young Keseth recovered from his illness on the 20th day of Jake's stay. The child insisted that Jake's stories had helped him fight off the fever, though the healers remained skeptical. On the final day of the test, Elder Sithana called Jake to the main chamber. All the senior Zephyrians were present, including War Commander Vexthul. "You have completed the trials," Elder Sithana announced. "You shared our hardships without complaint. You put the welfare of others before your own comfort. Most importantly, you chose the path of peace even when it meant opposing your own people's military." War Commander Vexthul stepped forward. "I must admit, human Jake Miller, that you have changed my opinion of your species. Your actions show that humans are capable of growth and wisdom. But I am just one person," Jake said. "I can't speak for all humans." "No," Elder Sithana agreed. "But you can be an example. If one human can learn to think beyond his own immediate needs, perhaps others can as well." She gestured to the large viewing screen, which showed the space around New Haven. In the distance, Jake could see the lights of human warships holding position at the edge of the system. "Your military kept their word and stopped when they received your message," Elder Sithana said. "This shows that some humans can be reasoned with. It gives us hope for the future." Jake looked at the ships and felt a mixture of relief and worry. He had prevented a war, but now he had to return home and face the consequences of his choices. Some people would call him a hero for making peace. Others would call him a traitor for siding with aliens against human military forces. "Are you ready to return home?" Elder Sithana asked. Jake thought about his small room above Pete's repair shop, about the loneliness and struggle of his daily life. Then he thought about the friends he had made among the Zephyrians, about young Keseth who looked up to him, and about the trust that Elder Sithana had shown him. "Yes," he said finally, "but I hope this isn't goodbye forever." Elder Sithana smiled. "If humans prove worthy of our friendship, there will be many opportunities for us to meet again. You have opened a door, Jake Miller. Now we must see who chooses to walk through it." As the Zephyrian ship prepared to return Jake to New Haven, He had no idea that his month among the aliens had been broadcast to Zephyrian worlds throughout the galaxy. His simple acts of kindness and courage had become proof that humans might be ready to join the galactic community. But first, Jake had to convince his own people that making friends with aliens was better than making enemies. Jake's return to New Haven was nothing like he had expected. Instead of quietly resuming his life, he found himself at the center of a political storm that reached all the way to Earth. Commander Ross from Earth Command was waiting when the Zephyrian shuttle landed. He was a tall, stern man with gray hair and the kind of expression that suggested he did not approve of civilians making contact with aliens. "Jake Miller," Commander Ross said as Jake stepped off the alien shuttle. "You've caused quite a stir. Earth Command wants a full debriefing on everything that happened during your time with the aliens." Behind Commander Ross stood Mayor Collins, Captain Hayes, and several other officials Jake didn't recognize. They all looked tense and worried. The crowd of colonists watching from behind security barriers seemed divided between those who saw Jake as a hero and those who thought he was a traitor. "I just tried to help," Jake said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause problems." "Problems?" Commander Ross almost laughed. "Son, you've potentially changed the course of human expansion in this entire sector of space. We need to understand exactly what these aliens want and what you promised them." Over the next several days, Jake found himself answering the same questions over and over again. Military analysts wanted to know about Zephyrian technology. Diplomats asked about their culture and politics. Scientists were fascinated by their biology and language. But the most important meeting came when Elder Sithana herself arrived on New Haven with a full diplomatic delegation. The meeting took place in the colony's largest conference room. Elder Sithana sat across from Commander Ross, Mayor Collins, and a team of Earth Command officials. Jake was allowed to attend as a translator and cultural advisor, a role that still felt strange to him. "We come to discuss the future relationship between our peoples," Elder Sithana began. "Jake Miller has shown us that humans possess the capacity for wisdom and compassion. But questions remain about whether he represents the norm or the exception." Commander Ross leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A trial period of cooperation," Elder Sithana replied. "We will allow human expansion through our territory and provide limited technological assistance. In return, humans must prove they can be trusted neighbors in this galaxy." "And if we refuse?" Commander Ross asked. War leader Nixara, who had accompanied Elder Sithana, answered that question. "Then human expansion stops here. We control the gateway to this entire galactic arm. No human ship will pass through our space." The tension in the room was thick. Jake could see that Commander Ross was angry about being given ultimatums by aliens, but he also understood the practical reality. The Zephyrians clearly had superior technology and could enforce their will if necessary. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been quietly taking notes, finally spoke up. "What would this cooperation look like?" Elder Sithana smiled at the question. "We propose a cultural exchange program. Young humans and Zephyrians would live among each other's people, learning about different ways of life. Jake Miller has already shown that such exchanges can be successful. You want our children?" Commander Ross's voice was sharp with suspicion. "We want to build understanding," Elder Sithana replied calmly. "Fear comes from ignorance. If our young people grow up knowing each other, they are less likely to choose war when they become leaders." Jake listened to the debate that followed and realized that the adults were making the same mistake he had almost made when he first found Elder Kethvar. They were letting fear override compassion. "Can I say something?" Jake asked during a brief pause in the discussion. Commander Ross looked annoyed. "This is a high-level diplomatic meeting, son. Maybe you should—" "Let him speak," Elder Sithana interrupted. "Jake Miller has proven his wisdom. His words carry weight with my people." Jake stood up, feeling nervous under the attention of so many important people. "A month ago I was nobody. Just an orphan kid trying to get by. Then I found Elder Kethvar dying in that crash and I had to make a choice." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of both humans and Zephyrians. "I could have walked away. I could have called the authorities and let them handle it. That would have been safer and easier. But it would also have been wrong." Jake turned to Commander Ross. "You're afraid of making the wrong choice, and I understand that. But doing nothing is also a choice. If we turn down this opportunity because we're scared, we might lose something amazing." And what if they're lying? Commander Ross asked. What if this is all a trick to weaken our defenses? Before Jake could answer, young Kesseth stepped forward from where he had been standing with the Zephyrian delegation. The child had insisted on coming to New Haven to see Jake again. Jake Miller saved my life, Kesseth said in careful English. When I was sick, he stayed with me. He told me stories about brave humans who helped people in trouble. He made me want to be brave too. The simple honesty in the child's voice seemed to affect everyone in the room. Even Commander Ross's expression softened slightly. Elder Sith Anna placed a gentle hand on her grandson's shoulder. Children see truth more clearly than adults sometimes. They have not yet learned to let fear cloud their judgment. Dr. Park leaned forward with interest. Jake, during your time with them, what did you learn about their technology? How advanced are they, really? Jake thought carefully before answering. More advanced than us in some ways, less in others. Their ships are faster and their medicine is better. But they're not warriors by nature. They value wisdom and art more than weapons. That doesn't answer the question of whether they could defeat us in a war, Commander Ross said bluntly. Yes, they could, Jake replied without hesitation, but they don't want to. War would be wasteful and painful for both sides. That's why they're offering friendship instead. War leader Nixara spoke for the first time during the meeting. Jake Miller speaks truth. We have the power to destroy your colonies, but we choose not to use it. We hope humans will make the same choice when you become stronger. Over the following weeks, negotiations continued between the human and Zephyrian delegations. Jake found himself serving as an unofficial bridge between the two groups, helping to explain cultural differences and smooth over misunderstandings. He learned that the Zephyrian Confederation was actually a loose alliance of dozens of species who had chosen cooperation over conquest. They had been watching human expansion with growing concern, debating whether to make contact or simply block further human advance into their territory. Elder Kethvar had been one of the few voices arguing that humans might be capable of peaceful coexistence. His death and Jake's kindness to him had provided the evidence that the peaceful faction needed to convince the others to try diplomacy. But not all Zephyrians were convinced. A faction led by War Commander Vexthal still believed that humans were too aggressive and unpredictable to be trusted. They pointed to humanity's history of warfare and environmental destruction as proof that the species was inherently destructive. We have seen what humans do to worlds they colonize, Vexthal argued during one heated debate. They strip resources, pollute environments, and fight among themselves constantly. Why should we believe they will treat us any better? Jake had to admit that Vexthal had valid points. Humans did have a history of conflict and environmental damage, but he also knew that people could change and grow. You're right that we've made mistakes, Jake said, but that's why we need friends like you to help us do better. If you shut us out, we'll just keep making the same mistakes. If you work with us, maybe you can teach us better ways. The breakthrough came when Katie Walsh, a young engineer from New Haven, volunteered to be the first human to live long-term among the Zephyrians. She was fascinated by their technology and eager to learn from them. In return, Kesseth asked to stay on New Haven for several months to attend human schools and learn about human culture. The boy had become fascinated with Jake's stories about Earth and wanted to see how humans lived. Elder Sithana agreed to the exchange, but with conditions. Both children will be closely monitored. If either is mistreated or unhappy, the program ends immediately. Commander Ross was reluctant to approve the plan, but Dr. Park convinced him that the scientific knowledge Katie could gain would be invaluable. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, she argued. We could learn more about advanced technology in a few months than we might discover on our own in decades. As preparations began for the exchange program, Jake realized that his simple act of kindness to a dying alien had grown into something much larger than he had ever imagined. Two species that had never trusted each other were now planning to share their children and their knowledge. But Jake also sensed that powerful forces on both sides still opposed the alliance. Some humans saw cooperation with aliens as weakness or surrender. Some Zephyrians viewed human expansion as an inevitable threat that could only be stopped by force. The fragile peace that Jake had helped create would need constant protection. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, one act of violence by either side could destroy everything they had built. As Jake watched Katie Walsh prepare for her journey to the Zephyrian homeworld and helped Kesseth settle into his new life on New Haven, He wondered if he had done the right thing. The weight of two civilizations' future seemed too heavy for one teenager's shoulders. 6 months after the cultural exchange program began, Jake thought everything was going well. Katie Walsh sent regular reports from the Zephyrian homeworld, describing amazing cities and technologies that seemed like magic. Young Kesseth had adapted quickly to life on New Haven, making friends at school and charming everyone with his curiosity about human customs. Then, Admiral Stone arrived with a battle fleet. Jake was teaching Kesseth how to play baseball when the alarm sirens began wailing. Across New Haven, they looked up to see dozens of human warships dropping out of hyperspace, their weapons powered and ready for battle. The response from the Zephyrians was immediate. 3 of their massive vessels appeared at the edge of the system, their hulls gleaming with energy that made Jake's skin tingle even from the planet's surface. "What's happening?" Kesseth asked, his young voice filled with fear. Jake didn't know how to answer. The peace he had helped build was about to shatter, and he had no idea why. The answer came when Commander Ross burst into the colony administration building where Jake and Kesseth had taken shelter. His face was grim as he activated the emergency communication system. "Admiral Stone, this is Commander Ross. We have the situation under control here. There's no need for military intervention." Admiral Stone's voice crackled over the speakers, cold and authoritative. "Commander, you've allowed alien influence to compromise this entire colony. We have reports that human children are being held hostage by aliens, and that colonists are sharing classified technology with potential enemies." Jake felt his heart sink. Someone on Earth had completely misunderstood what was happening here. They saw the exchange program as some kind of alien plot instead of an attempt at peaceful cooperation. Elder Sithana's voice joined the conversation as her ship moved into communication range. "Admiral Stone, there are no hostages here. All participants in our cultural exchange came willingly and remain free to leave at any time." "I don't negotiate with aliens," Admiral Stone replied. "Return our people immediately or face the consequences." Jake looked at Kesseth, who was trembling beside him. The young Zephyrian understood enough to know that the human military saw him as a threat rather than a guest. "Commander Ross," Jake said urgently, "let me talk to the Admiral. He needs to understand what's really happening here. This is a military situation now, Jake. Civilians need to stay out of it." But War Leader Nixara's voice cut through the debate. "If Admiral Stone fires on our ships, we will consider it an act of war against the entire Zephyrian Confederation. Your expansion into this sector will end, and your existing colonies will be cut off from Earth." The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Jake could see the fear on Commander Ross's face as he realized how quickly everything was spiraling out of control. "Admiral, perhaps we should—" Commander Ross began. "I have my orders," Admiral Stone interrupted. "These aliens will not intimidate the human race. All ships prepare to engage." Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He grabbed the microphone from Commander Ross and activated the ship-wide communication channel. "This is Jake Miller," he announced, his voice carrying to every ship in both fleets. "I'm the one who started all this when I helped a dying Zephyrian elder. Admiral Stone, you're about to start a war because you don't understand what's happening here. Son, you need to get off this channel immediately." Admiral Stone's voice was sharp with anger. "No, sir, I don't think I do," Jake replied, feeling braver than he had any right to be. "You say the Zephyrians are holding human hostages, but I'm standing right here next to Kesseth, who is a young Zephyrian living freely among humans. If we're taking hostages, then I guess we're both guilty." He looked down at Kesseth, who nodded encouragingly. "The truth is we're not enemies. We're friends learning from each other. Katie Walsh is on the Zephyrian homeworld because she wanted to study their technology. Kesseth is here because he wanted to learn about human culture. No one forced them to go anywhere." "You're just a kid," Admiral Stone said dismissively. "You don't understand the bigger picture." "Maybe not," Jake admitted. "But I understand that Elder Kethavar died in my arms after teaching me that kindness matters more than fear. I understand that his granddaughter offered friendship to humanity when she could have chosen war. And I understand that you're about to throw away the best thing that ever happened to our species because you're afraid of what you don't know." Elder Sithana's voice joined the conversation again. "Jake Miller speaks wisdom beyond his years. We offer one final chance for peace. Withdraw your fleet and we will do the same. Continue on your current path and we will defend ourselves." The silence that followed lasted several long seconds. Jake could imagine Admiral Stone weighing his options, calculating the cost of a war against an obviously superior alien force. Finally, Admiral Stone spoke again. "I want to speak with the Miller boy in person. If he's really here voluntarily and unharmed, then maybe we can discuss this situation more calmly." An hour later, Jake found himself in the most important meeting of his life. Admiral Stone had come down to the planet's surface with a small security team, while Elder Sithana had arrived with her own delegation. They met in the colony's main conference room, with the two fleets still facing each other in orbit. Admiral Stone was a big man with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He studied Jake carefully, as if trying to determine whether the young man was lying or had been brainwashed by aliens. "Tell me exactly what happened," Admiral Stone said. "From the beginning." Jake told his story once again, from finding Elder Kethvar in the crashed ship to the cultural exchange program that was now under threat. He tried to help Admiral Stone understand that the Zephyrians weren't conquerors or manipulators, but potential allies who valued wisdom and peace. "They could have destroyed our colonies at any time," Jake pointed out. "Their technology is far ahead of ours. But instead of using force, they offered friendship. Doesn't that tell you something about their intentions?" Admiral Stone listened without interrupting, but his expression remained skeptical. "Maybe they're just waiting for us to lower our guard. Maybe this whole friendship act is a trick to get us to share our strategic information." Keseth, who had been sitting quietly beside Elder Sithana, suddenly spoke up. "Admiral Stone, may I ask you a question?" The Admiral looked surprised to be addressed by the young alien. "Go ahead. If my people wanted to trick you, why would we send a child? Why would we allow your engineer to see our most advanced technologies? Why would we keep our promises when we could easily break them?" The simple logic of the child's questions seemed to affect Admiral Stone more than all the adult arguments he had heard. Elder Sithana stood up slowly. "Admiral, I propose a solution that may satisfy both our concerns. Let us formalize our agreements. Create a treaty that establishes clear rules for our relationship. If either side violates these rules, the other may withdraw from the alliance without penalty." "What kind of rules?" Admiral Stone asked. "No military bases in each other's territory," Elder Sithana suggested. "No sharing of weapons technology. No interference in each other's internal politics. But free trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation on peaceful projects." Dr. Park, who had been taking notes throughout the meeting, leaned forward with excitement. "Think about what we could accomplish together. Medical advances, environmental restoration, space exploration. The benefits would be enormous." Admiral Stone was quiet for a long time, clearly wrestling with a decision that could affect the future of humanity. Finally, he looked at Jake. "You really believe these aliens can be trusted?" Jake thought about his months living among the Zephyrians, about the kindness they had shown him, and the respect they had given to his species despite humanity's flaws. "Yes, sir, I do. But more importantly, I believe we can be trusted to honor our agreements with them. We have a chance to prove that humans can be good neighbors in this galaxy. I think we should take it." Admiral Stone nodded slowly. "All right, son. You've given me a lot to think about." He turned to Elder Sithana. "I'm willing to discuss a formal treaty, but it will need approval from Earth Command and the Colonial Council." "We understand," Elder Sithana replied. "But while negotiations proceed, we propose that the cultural exchange program continue. Jake Miller and young Keseth have proven that our peoples can live together in harmony. Over the following weeks, diplomats from both species worked to create the New Haven Accords, the first formal treaty between humanity and the Zephyrian Confederation. Jake found himself serving as an unofficial advisor, helping to explain cultural nuances and resolve misunderstandings. The treaty established trade agreements, set up permanent embassies, and created a joint council to oversee future cooperation. Most importantly, it recognized the right of both species to expand and explore while respecting each other's territory and sovereignty. Jake was present when the treaty was signed, in the same conference room where he had first met Elder Sithana. As he watched human and Zephyrian leaders put their names to the historic document, he thought about how far they had all come since that day he found a dying alien in a crashed ship. But the real validation of what they had built came a year later, when Katie Walsh returned from the Zephyrian homeworld with